A surprisingly common trigger for all kinds of addictive and compulsive behaviors, a common trigger for bad habits, is boredom. Today, let's examine why boredom often triggers us into our worst behaviors, what's behind this, and how you can change your life by changing your relationship with boredom. Trust me, this goes way deeper than you think it does. Ooh, would you look at that? That's a pretty long video, isn't it? I hope you don't get bored while watching it. Otherwise, well, you'll have to keep watching to find out. I've mentioned this many times before, but it bears repeating. All habitual behavior, including addictions, including bad habits, follow the same pattern, and this is called the habit loop. Every habit has a trigger, an action, and a reward. In this loop, the trigger is very important, especially for addictions, compulsive behaviors, and bad habits. The trigger is the thing that happens before you end up doing the thing that you wanted to avoid, before you end up doing the thing that you're trying to quit. Now, everything we're going to talk about here applies to all kinds of compulsive behaviors, bad habits, addictions, and so on. But because that's my specialty, I will be talking about porn addiction and use porn addiction as the example. So considering the habit loop, what are the things that trigger porn use? Some of the things are pretty obvious. For example, you might be scrolling through social media, you come across some thirst traps, and of course, that gets you aroused, and that goes, well, I'm already looking at the screen, I'm already looking at stuff that's sexually arousing, might as well go all the way, you end up watching porn. That makes a lot of sense, right? Or maybe you are feeling lonely, you're trying to get a date, maybe you're swiping through Tinder, you have a very frustrating experience there, you feel rejected, and that triggers you into using porn. These are the kind of logical, yeah, that makes sense type of triggers. But one of the most common triggers is much more trivial than that. It's just boredom. It's just you're home, alone, you've got nothing to do, and you end up watching porn. Why does this happen? These days, we are used to responding to any feeling of boredom with stimulation. And a huge variety of stimulation is always instantly available. Basically, almost everyone alive today who owns a smartphone has the habit of always distracting ourselves from any kind of discomfort we feel. And boredom is a kind of discomfort. So as soon as you feel slightly bored, you're like, hey, why not whip out my phone and start scrolling through some feed? And this is totally normal for us, right? Everybody does it. But what we've forgotten is that in terms of human history, this is a brand new phenomenon. Throughout all of human history until very, very recently, downtime has always been part of the human experience. And I'm talking about real downtime, where you just have nothing going on. There's just no input. There's no stimulation. It's just you alone with your thoughts. Nowadays, that's almost unimaginable, isn't it? Most of us are plugged in from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep. Quite literally, the phone screen is the first thing you see in the morning and the last thing you see before you go to sleep, if you're like most people. The phone screen is also the thing that you see in every kind of in-between moment in your life. And this did not happen by accident. The fact that we spend every free moment of time that we have scrolling through some feed and looking at a screen is a huge success story for the companies in the attention economy. Social media companies and many other types of companies as well are competing for the most valuable and most scarce resource available right now, which is human attention. And they've gotten very, very good at extracting this resource to the max. So the fact that we are so addicted to our phones, the fact that we're so addicted to stimulation is by design. Your addiction is someone else's business model. So okay, we don't have any stimulation-free time anymore, but it would be easy to think, well, nothing was lost, right? I mean, we went from literally doing nothing during that time to now doing something, so no loss, right? But assuming this is a mistake, because human beings thrive on cycles of intensity and rest, of up and down time. If you want to get fit, you need exercise and you need rest. If you want to get smart, you need time spent on focused learning and time spent on unfocused mind wandering. If you want to get healthy, you need good food and you need fasting periods. It's always the combination of intensity and rest that leads to growth. And this is very literally true for all the examples I just gave. and for many others as well. In a very practical way, the gains you make from exercising happen in between the workout sessions when you're resting. And the same goes for learning. The majority of the learning happens in between your study sessions when you're resting and when you're sleeping. And the same is true for food. Of course, healthy food is very valuable and very important for the body, but the actual benefits from healthy food come not while you're eating it, but in the periods of digestion and rest in between meals. And if you were stuffing yourself with food all the time, you would not get those benefits. And the same is true for how we feed our mind. By being constantly plugged in and stimulated, we are missing out on that downtime. We're missing out on a vital component. And you can bet that we're causing all kinds of problems for ourselves. To figure out what exactly we're missing out and what to do about it, we can ask this question. What would happen if you started feeling that uncomfortable feeling of boredom, but then you didn't immediately reach for your phone? You didn't immediately seek stimulation and distraction. I can't give you the exact answer for what will happen for you specifically, but the good news is you can try this out anytime and find out for yourself. When you try this out, you will most likely experience something like this. First, that feeling of unease and discomfort increases because you're so used to always getting stimulation right away. There's part of you that expects this to happen, and when it doesn't happen, it's like, hey, what's wrong? Why aren't we getting stimulated right now? Where's the distraction? You might even feel that part of you is like screaming at you to reach for that phone, screaming at you to not stay in this discomfort. If you still don't give in, even though this urge is rising so much, you will most likely experience one or a combination of the following. Unpleasant emotions coming up, such as sadness or loneliness or feelings of hopelessness. Negative, unpleasant thoughts starting to go through your mind. This could be like negative self-talk or unpleasant memories from the past or worrying about the future. And creative ideas. New and interesting ideas and thoughts start going through your mind. And sometimes it feels like entire complex and brilliant ideas just pop into your mind seemingly out of nowhere. This is what's called inspiration. So okay, we have two things that are pretty unpleasant and one thing that's really nice. So what's going on here? Unfortunately, if you're unfamiliar with boredom, so if you have a long-lasting habit of basically never being bored or sitting in stillness, maybe in some meditation practice or something, you're more likely to get the negative feelings and thoughts first than to get the creative ideas. Seems kind of unfair, right? Why is this? Well, I don't know why it is, but I do have a theory. I think that when you give your mind downtime, when you sit in stillness, basically two things happen. One is maintenance and the other is creativity. Maintenance is when your mind and your body start bringing things up that you need to deal with. Stuff that needs to be taken care of that you've been ignoring or shoving down for too long. So for example, you might start feeling sad emotions or have sad memories, and that's your body's way of saying, hey, there's something you need to deal with here, right? There's maybe something that you haven't gone through a grieving process here. You've been trying to shove these emotions down, but what you need is to go through that grieving process. Or maybe these feelings and thoughts of loneliness and directionlessness come up. Again, this is like your mind and body sending you a signal of what's important. It's like saying, hey, you're a social animal. You feel so much better when you're embedded in a community, when you have friends to talk to. Like, what's going on? You're feeling lonely and these feelings are unpleasant. It's supposed to show you this is something you need to deal with. This is something you need to do something about in your life. Don't just keep suffering. Or if you feel like meaningless and hopeless and everything's pointless, again, that feels bad, but it's your system telling you, hey, you crave purpose and a sense of meaning in your life. Go and do something about this. Start fixing this problem. Don't just ignore it. And yes, this feels bad. It's unpleasant to be in that process, but it's basically a form of tough love. It's a sign that says, take care of this and your life will be so much better. And in general, it seems that the longer you ignore these type of signs, the louder the signal gets, so the worse the suffering feels. But it's always trying to direct your attention towards something you need to deal with. So in some cases, there are simply emotions that you need to process. And I have a podcast episode that explores this in more detail, which you can check out here in the top corner or in the link in the description. And sometimes there are also thoughts you need to process. Sometimes there are areas of your life that you need to start dealing with. But the good news is that when you do allow this to happen, when you allow these thoughts to arise, when you allow these emotions to arise, and you practice just sitting with that for a while, it frees you up to experience the benefits of stillness. It frees you up to experience creativity. When there's no longer all this maintenance work to do, creativity is the thing that you most reliably experience when you allow boredom and stillness to happen. And it's a really underrated feature of the mind because it feels like you get all of your best ideas when you just sit and do nothing, and it takes basically no effort. This whole thing might seem counterintuitive at first, but I think it's actually quite similar to working out. When you first work out, when you're really unfit, you haven't exercised in ages, and you go do a workout, what do you experience? Well, your muscles will be sore, right? You'll be hurting all over. But the pain you feel is actually a sign that says, go do more of this. And the more you work out and the more regularly you do it, the better you end up feeling after each workout. And it's the same with allowing boredom to happen and cultivating stillness in your life. It can be painful in the beginning, but that discomfort is really a sign that tells you keep going. There's better things waiting. So at this point, I've hopefully convinced you that allowing for some stimulation-free downtime in your life is hugely beneficial. So let's get into some practical tips of how to do this. But first, let me quickly mention that if you're currently struggling with porn addiction and you want to learn the most effective step-by-step system for overcoming this addiction, check out the first link in the description. There you can get access to the Quit by Healing program, which gives you simple step-by-step daily exercises to overcome porn addiction for good and heal your brain completely from the negative effects that long-term porn use has. Check it out. You'll be grateful that you did. So here are 3 things you can do to change your relationship with boredom and get the absolute most out of the practice of stillness. The first is about your environment. Allowing yourself to experience stillness is difficult if you have your phone buzzing in your pocket and you're sitting in front of your screens and there's your gaming console right over there, and a few steps away there's a fridge full of comfort food. You get what I'm saying. If you're surrounded by temptations, it makes everything harder. On the other hand, there's one type of environment that gives an extra boost to all the benefits you get from stillness: nature. And no, this isn't just some woo-woo tree hugger idea. This is actually scientifically backed. There's a surprisingly large amount of research that looks at how exposure to nature affects the human body and the human mind. And the effects are much greater than you would guess. If you want to learn more about this, I can highly recommend the book Nature Fix. So my recommendation is that you leave your phone at home, or at the very least turn it into do not disturb mode, and then go out into nature. Now, if you have access to wild nature, that's fantastic. But if you don't, just any kind of green around you is going to help. So a local park or even a nice quiet tree-lined street will do the trick. The second aspect is allowing, and this is all about your mental attitude. Like I mentioned before, sitting in stillness will initially lead to discomfort. It can bring up these difficult thoughts and emotions, or just make you feel antsy and make you feel a strong urge to find some distraction or stimulate yourself in some way. Try to bring an attitude of allowing to all of this. Basically, allow yourself to feel antsy and nervous. Allow yourself to feel bored. And even internally say yes to the negative thoughts and feelings that come up. Allow them to unfold and see what happens. And the third aspect is writing. Try this. Bring pen and paper with you and start your stillness session by first just sitting and doing nothing for 10 to 20 minutes. Then start writing about your experience. And you can write down any thoughts that came up. Also write down how you felt or how you feel right now, and see if through writing you can go deeper into that experience. You can examine different thought loops that come up. Especially if you have negative and difficult thoughts come up, you can write those down and start questioning them, start probing to see what's underneath this, what's behind this. This kind of writing is like a magnifying glass for your internal experience. And for me personally, it has helped immensely to do this kind of writing, to bring greater clarity to my life and to resolve lots and lots of inner issues and conflicts that I was carrying with me for many years in my life. If you want to get some tips on how to do this, check out the first link in the description. There you can join the Quit by Healing Discord community, and in it I've shared a simple introspective writing crash course that you can access for free. So this is how I recommend you start practicing stillness and change your relationship to boredom. When you do this, you are learning and you're teaching yourself one extremely important thing, which is that various urges and feelings can come up, but that doesn't mean you have to respond to them. Unlearning this connection between feeling some kind of discomfort and immediately reaching for stimulation will make it much easier for you to deal with urges without giving in to addictive behavior and bad habits. Plus, by doing it in the deliberate way I've laid out here, you can actually start digging around in your psyche and start resolving some emotional and mental issues. And that also goes a long way to reducing the pull of addictive behavior in your life. As you'll see when you try this out, cultivating stillness is a missing puzzle piece to leading a good life for many people. Let me know if you have any questions about this by leaving a comment below. Also, if you appreciate the kind of content I make, be sure to leave it a like, leave a comment, and if you know anyone who could benefit from this, share this video with them. I want to reach as many people as possible with this message and with these tools, and I need your help to do it.